Okay, it's go time. I'm a little late. I noticed that we've got a slight bug in the code here. We've got two bugs in the code here. We have currently we currently have no way of having the text to wrap, and that's just the way that we're building this thing. It's actually the worst possible way we could build this image. It's just pasting text on top of a image. What we really should have is we should have it actually modifying like some SVG. I think that's the file type, so that it actually like fits within whatever we specify prior. I could also just make it every week, but that's kind of lame. I kind of like the idea of not having to do that. But yeah, maybe we just make the text smaller. That's another idea. The other bug here is that Hades 2 is actually 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Thursday. Yo, Dharmadam, what's good? We are doing well. We're about to watch some more JP. I'm not sure if this is like lecture 1, part 2. I'm not sure if he's just answering questions here, if he's just talking about the course. Maybe we could just skip ahead, but object and meaning. Ooh, the man himself. Absolutely. We gotta go back. It's the final boss. Yeah, so it seems that the code that I have probably determines the date based on Central Time. So Hades 2 being at 8 p.m. Eastern Time maybe is Friday Central Time. So then it puts it onto Friday, and then it converts it back into Eastern Time, or at least it says Eastern Time for the time. So that's actually supposed to be Thursday at 8 p.m. And so I might need to go back in there and change that up. Not super important for now, but it's Jordan Peterson's world, and we're just living in it. Well, actually, that's as far as what how it's a good way to describe perhaps how he speaks now, where he's got this whole fantasy in his head, but unfortunately he's unable to make it accessible for everyone else. So yeah, perhaps as far as he's concerned, yeah, it's his world and we're just living in it. But we'll see. That's why I said I'm the translator here. Actually, wait, does this still say finale? Oh, that's such an oversight by me. All right. This was supposed to say Jordan Peterson translator, and I need to change the category to just chatting. We are officially done with our Silksong streams. He got possessed by a dragon. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing that we are going to be doing while we're working on part 2 and part 3 is kind of considering what could have guided his incremental change over time. His very slow change, but it accumulates. So yeah, let's jump in. What do we got? Playback speed 1.25. We might be able to get away with something larger than that. Let's just do 1.3 maybe.
So you've noticed that this is being taped, so the tapes will show up on some relatively regular schedule. I wouldn't expect that precisely because I don't want to make any promises about exactly how quickly that'll be done. Martin Zhang here is doing it on his own accord, so it's like 2 thumbs up for Martin as far as I'm concerned. So because he's done this for a number of my courses, and it's a lot of work and it's much appreciated. So anyways, that's why all of this stuff is set up.
I wonder how many lecture series did not make it to YouTube
what the class
prior to 2015 or 2014.
And if you've heard this lecture, and I'm sure at least a reasonable number of you have heard me lecture before, so you sort of know how I'm going to lecture, and that was more or less how I'm going to do it. I'm hoping that we can make this class like deadly successful. That's the idea, and that you'll regard it as something that depending on your participation, obviously, you'll regard it as something that's really valuable. I'm telling you the stuff I've learned that I'm telling you about. It has been so useful to me that I can't really even communicate how useful it's been. It's been unbelievably useful. And partly what I'm going to explain to you, if I can, is why there are tenets of classical morality. And there's a variety of them, and one of them is, for example, don't lie. And that's a tough one, because you might think, well, why not? Really, why not? I mean, if you can set up a situation so that you benefit from an untruth, what stops you from doing it? And Dostoevsky, in one of his most famous statements, he said, if there's no God, everything is permitted. And it's a takeoff on Nietzschean thinking too, and it's a problem that he thought would be the fundamental problem of the 20th century, and I think he was absolutely right. And it's a question very much worth thinking about. It's like, why bother with things that are moral? Why do things right? Is there even such a thing as doing things right? These are great questions, and hopefully what I'm going to try to do with you guys is to show you what the consequence. I've been thinking about those things for, it's almost 30 years, I guess now, and I've got certainly a ways that has been satisfying to me, and I want to tell you what I've concluded, and then you can decide for yourself if you think it's useful. And one thing I would really encourage you to do is, you should be skeptical about what I'm telling you. Really, you should question it. I don't mean the kind of skepticism that's like this, because I'm not here to prove myself to you at all, and you're not here to prove yourself to me either. So you have to listen, you have to attend, but by the same token, I would say, I'm telling you things that I've tried to hammer to death. I've tried to see if they were wrong, because that's how you're supposed to test ideas. You throw out an idea and you hammer the hell out of it, see if you can see if it's wrong, not whether it's right, because that's ideological thinking. And the things I'm telling you are things I could not disprove. They seem to stand up, and I've tried multiple tests, so one of them is sort of a consilience test, and a consilience is a word that was defined by Edward O. Wilson, and when an explanation is consilient, what that means is that it's coherent across multiple levels of analysis, and so I've tried to test the ideas that I'm describing to you. I've tried to determine whether they're logically coherent and appropriate at the level of general psychology.
When I've heard him talk about Hinduism, it seems like all gibberish, and the Hindus in the comments tell him he's way off. Yeah, I don't doubt that. I mean, he's now done that obviously recently with Christianity, and he's gotten now a bunch of Christians yelling at him. I wouldn't doubt that he could do that with, he's obviously done that with the postmodernists, where they'll tell him, hey, your definition of postmodernism isn't what everyone else is using. So yeah, he does seem to do that a lot. That's a habit of his, or I don't know if that habit's the right word, but he seems to generate the understanding in his own head of the thing and then run with it. And, I guess anyone's susceptible to that. And I think I need to be on guard for, my own doing that within the document. I think we're pretty covered. What we're doing now, which I guess what I'm doing now, which is looking through references, figuring out what, how stable we can make the document. I'm now kind of doing that test to make sure that the ideas that we have in the document aren't just, made up or hallucinated. If the language models helped us out, and fortunately so far, we're doing pretty fine. So we'll see. We'll keep testing things, and having discussions. And hopefully once we start collaborating with people, then they can throw their own assaults.
And clinical psychology, and neuroscience, and narrative theory, and religious thinking, and then also to see if they're actually applicable as practical realities in day-to-day life and in social life. And as far as I'm concerned, they stand up. That's been my experience. And I've also watched people over many years now try to apply them in their own lives, and all I've been able to see so far with my graduate students and so on is that it works. So, hooray for that. And so we're going to try to understand some basic issues like what the utility of truth is. And that's a really important question. It's maybe the fundamental question. Is truth useful? And if so, how and why? And we're going to go after that, especially with regards to verbal truth, because there's something magical about an example of that with this little story, because that little story happens to be an extraordinarily deep little story, and it's so old, that story. I think that story stems from when we were still in
it just changed.
And that when our prime...
It just changed the title back. All right, reconnection successful. Why?